Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για την πρόσκληση. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the very interesting choice of the topic, which is very, very important at this moment and at all moments in the history of mankind. I will try first to answer whether Afghanistan is Switzerland today, and try to answer with the question, was it before? Because we always have to compare with what the situation was before the armed conflict and what the objective of the United Nations and the international community is today. And the same for Libya and other places in the world, or even South Africa. And on whether without enforcement you would have the opportunity to have Nelson Mandela outside of the jail and have him inspiring the world. So enforcement was the necessary step to be able to have Nelson Mandela inspiring. So we are not saying that inspiration is out of the picture, but enforcement has to be there before that. It has to be quick, it is necessary, it's justifiable, is important. And I will begin with three very quick images. Already we have said the first and the second day of the Olympic Games in London this year, we had the hugest massacres of civilians by the Assad regime in Syria. The second image, in Mali, 2 days ago, the rebels controlling the north decided that the football, playing and watching football on television is very dangerous. And they decided to impose a ban on football. And they considered this as part of the war idea in Mali. And in Somalia, a few months ago, a suicide bomber entered a hall like we are here today, in a medical school graduation of students, the first one after 15 years, and exploded, killing 19 students that were ready to go and work in Somalia. For the first time after 50 years, doctors in Mogadishu, plus the Minister of Health, the Minister of Education and Injury, and the Minister of Sports. Can you really inspire peace, justice, democracy, or any other ideal in such a situation of complete lack of rational thinking? Inspiration needs freedom of thinking. In the first place, of expression, freedom from poverty. It needs human rights and democracy and justice. And can we really wait for these ideals to be inspired and then put in place while at the same time hundreds of people are killed on a daily basis? Or do we need to really concentrate our efforts to make the international system on enforcing the peace that is already in place work and work efficiently? In a more personal note, I have been working with the Red Cross in conflicts around the world, and I was inspired by ideals and values to be there. But when I went there in a conflict situation, and the objective was a 2-hour morning ceasefire to evacuate wounded and sick and to bring humanitarian aid in, or to establish protection zones for the safety of civilians, or to have the parties to the conflict negotiate around a peace table for a truce or a peace. They are different, but one has to come first, always. So ceasefire first, then truce, then peace agreement, negotiations, and then peace agreements. You needed the law, you needed the imposition of the law, you needed to discuss about the obligations of the parties to the conflict to be able to proceed. So idealism and pragmatism have to go together. They are not separate, and through enforcement means that the international community has the institutional capacity to enforce peace. It has a wide array of coercive measures to use to enforce peace. We can do it, otherwise peace will remain an ideal, a dream. And this is not what we want to. We want peace to be established here and now. We want war to stop, violence to stop here and now. Indeed, there are a number of success stories of enforcement of peace in Libya. The most recent example. It's not Switzerland today either, but there is no war going on, and try to compare it with the days Gaddafi regime was bombing daily civilians. The international community said that when the state, the Security Council of the United Nations said that, when a state is unable or unwilling to protect its own citizens, international community not only has the right, but it has the obligation, the responsibility to enforce peace, to restore a breach of peace. It's not only success stories. I have to admit, Rwanda and Syria are failure stories of the enforcement mechanism. This is all the more helping us show what does it mean not to have the imposition of enforcement, not to have enforcement mechanism. What happens today in Syria is that nobody can discuss even a ceasefire of certain hours. And this is because of the lack of political will of states. Now, Sudan and Darfur is an intermediate situation. Very interesting case scenario. No use of force was used, but all the other measures international community disposes was used in Darfur. Peacekeepers of the African Union and very important regional organization of the area. Economic and arms embargo by the Security Council, criminal prosecution of al-Bashir before the International Criminal Court as personal individual responsible for genocide. And although it was a slow pace, although neither Sudan became Switzerland, today we have 3 peace agreements where all different armed groups in Sudan did sign, and we also have a new state, South Sudan, because of these enforcement measures. So, it's very important to see the use of force as one way when a state is unable or unwilling, and through United Nations, when the Security Council cannot act, you always have the General Assembly. It only happened once, but why not more than once in Korea, with Uniting for Peace resolution, which was very important, that it authorized use of force. You also have African Union, which has a very important statute, Article 4, paragraph H, saying that if there are grave circumstances, there is a right of intervention to member states of the African Union in Africa to restore peace. This is very important. We do have the means to do it. We also have a number of sanctions that are not so much referring to use of force, diplomatic, political, or even smart sanctions targeting individuals. And then there I come to the idea where individuals come into place. What these smart sanctions do is that they target members of the governments, of elites. They freeze assets, they ban traveling, like for the members of the family of Gaddafi or Saddam Hussein in Iraq or Milosevic or the Taliban, all in all. So these smart sanctions name and shame. And they put pressure on leaders to come to negotiation table and to decide and agree upon the peace agreement. So we do not think that inspiration by itself, alone, not only as a prevention measure, but by itself cannot answer the problem civilians face all around the world at this moment, because it works with individuals and not with states and other collective entities, because it works when democracy, peace and prosperity are already there, and not when governments, rebels and people strive for their own existence. And the international community has the means to enforce peace. It can do so, and it even has the obligation to do so when a state is unable or unwilling. Thank you very much.